You.
Hello. Yeah, my question is to the birthday guy, Mr. Martin. You said you have done your research where you found that the people who reach a state of nirvana or maybe enlightenment as you call it, they experience that true happiness. What I want to ask you is, how do you know they have reached that state? I mean, what is your standard? How you have defined that this is the state of enlightenment, scientifically or neuroscientifically, to be specific?
That's so we don't take up tons of time on that. There's all sorts of stuff out there that's been a vetted project for a decade in the academy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Really quickly, the initial standard, when we were looking at this, I traveled around to the people who ran a lot of the major scientific societies and stuff like that, and I said, how would you build an initial participant base for this that you would consider credible scientifically? And their starting point for us, which worked out very well, was to say you need to find people in established traditions who are deeply embedded in their community, the traditions that have specific definitions for what they need in relation to this. Because we brought it together, it sort of converged into one thing, right? But originally we started studying all these individual things, not knowing at all if they were going to converge or stay separate things or whatever. So they had, you know, basically with traditions, established traditions that had very precise definitions for what they meant by this stuff. And then people in those traditions who had been held up by the community, and there was a community consensus surrounding the fact that they had in fact met those criteria. And so we began with those individuals, and that allowed us to build, you know, a base of at least that, using that historical credibility that had been built up, and then we went from there. And I think, in the interest of time, probably we can just grab the rest off of the nuts and bolts of it.
But still, is this scientific research based on the beliefs of these traditional communities? I mean, it could be just a belief. Maybe they are established or not, who knows. Maybe it is just a belief system which may have inspired you, to be honest. But how can we say that? I mean, this is scientific research, and I think it is based on just a belief of some established community. I'm just asking. I also myself don't know how you standard it up scientifically. What is that top state, you know?
Okay. You want me to really answer it?
One quick, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm just checking for time here in the interest of time, because you're asking a great question. I've answered it, you know, thousands of times over the years, but it does take a little bit of time to answer. So the answer is yes. You know, first of all, we're talking about subjective human experience, right? Which naturally has belief folded into it, along with all kinds of other stuff. So is it beliefs? Absolutely, it's beliefs. Where we got lucky, in some sense, is that I was a technologist before I was a scholar. And so I was assuming that we were going to that we were basically going to make a button that just produced this, right? And I'm still assuming that. We still work on that with people all around the world. We have a whole giant space of people, conferences and everything that coordinate those sorts of things. So but it's a ways off, right? Nonetheless, when we first started, we were asking people from the perspective of sorting them for being able to do fMRI and EEG work on them. And so most people think, you know, you probably just put people into a brain scanner and then you scan their brain and then you know, the answers just pop out. But in fact, it can take 5-6 years to even know how to construct the question properly so that the brain scanning isn't a complete waste of time. And for an area like this, 5 to 7 years is common for the groundwork that it takes before you can even get someone into physiological measurement that makes any kind of sense. For us, it was 7 years. We were right in that straight spot. So what we did in the initial years was exactly what you do in anything leading up to a neuroscience experiment like that, which is that you basically try to sort your population in the best ways that you can. So we used every gold standard psychology and developmental and whatever measure that you can imagine. Basically, we had people just fill them out more and more and more until they told us we were never going to fill out another thing for us. We did long-form interviews with cognitive science-based questioning, right? So we were asking about changes in cognition, perception, memory, sense of self, emotion, stuff like that, right? People do not ask those questions of these individuals. I don't, you know, the way that went is I would sit down with them for usually 6 to 12 hours and really dig into them. And the first hour, they would talk about whatever, you know, they wanted spaciousness or Jesus Christ or whatever the hell they wanted to talk about from their own experience, right? And I would mostly throw that out. I would use it the time to build rapport. I would use the time to synchronize my language with them. But I wouldn't really pay attention to any of those answers that they thought were the important things for me to know. And then I would start asking them very specific questions about changes in cognition, affect, perception, memory, and sense of self, because those are the things that allow you to sort for neuroscanning. And what that did, accidentally, was level the playing field across all traditions. So it didn't really matter what belief system you had or what part of the world you were in or whatever else. I mean, you had certain changes in cognition or you didn't. You had certain changes in emotion or you didn't. So anyway, does that answer a little bit better for you?
Okay, well, we're going to move on whether it does or not. Another question?
Right here in the front.
Thank you. I have a question for Jeffrey. In the slide of positive psychology, you mentioned flow. So would you mind explain what is flow state and why it's necessary to build a positive psychology system?
So flow was really sort of pioneered in the academy by a guy named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. He's got the most difficult last name in psychology. Good luck with the translators on that one. So the notion of flow is that, and he was interested in it initially in people like extreme athletes, where you get to this point where you are so in tune with what you're doing. You are just so dissolved into the action of what you're doing that the chattering mind and all of its doubts, quiets down, essentially. So that sort of doubting mind, that doubting chatter stream that everybody has in their head, this negative chatter stream that most people have running in their head, that gets suppressed. And with that, you get a boost in performance because there's nothing impeding what an athlete has learned and programmed into their body in terms of doing their sport, and them doing the sport to the best of their ability. Their mind, if you will, is sort of out of the way. And he's got a bunch of different sort of categories of things that have to be true for this, like you have to have a goal, it's a goal-oriented thing as an example, and all of that. And so that's been traditionally considered a pretty core part of the modern positive psychology movement, simply because it takes away a lot of the negative emotion and the doubts and the negative cognition. It's a state that humans can experience and exist in. It doesn't have sort of those more negative aspects, and thus it becomes a more positive experience, and thus it throws into positive psychology.
Answering this question now, and it can be for any of the three of you, or three of you. Let us know please a bit about the homeless and the struggling from a consciousness perspective. You are talking about nirvana and enlightenment and awakening, and how would we better think about those people from a consciousness perspective? Can you elaborate a little bit about the homeless and the struggling? Thank you.
If we truly come to see ourselves as one humanity within one planet, within one cosmos, then we see everyone as a reflection of ourselves, like the Indra's net concept, that each individual point in the universe reflects all the others. Then we have to pay attention to, or we will naturally not want suffering in others. It's not only about I can eliminate my suffering, it's about how much suffering can I reduce in the whole world of humanity, in the world of nature. Our planet is suffering, very close to ocean death possibilities and things of this kind. And I think that's what this is all about, is expanding our consciousness away from ourselves into the whole that we are part of, and then still holding our uniqueness while doing that.
Thank you very much.
Well, one of the problems that keeps coming up in the talks that we've heard yesterday and today is a problem that was critiqued by the Buddhist theory of dependent origination, which is often we're starting off with typologies or taxonomies of difference, where we assume that we'll talk about traditions and established traditions, things that we think we know are very identifiable individuals. They could be collective individuals, or they could be physical body individuals. And then we're arriving from that kind of, this is an ontological presupposition, and then we arrive, not surprisingly, at the end, at visions of universalism. And I would like to suggest that part of the problem is the way we start, the way we enter into the problem, and it's precisely by looking at the types of people's experience that doesn't fit into that kind of categorization. And it's everywhere, in all the different categories. And it's extremely difficult for scientific, especially social theory, to come to grips with that. That's really one of the principal problems of the modern thought, which includes Buddhism as it comes into the modern academy. I'll just remind people very, very quickly to illustrate this. One of the historical ways in which this perversion has occurred is in relation to Marx, right? Marx could be seen as either a kind of very important figure or a very controversial figure, but Marx was proposing the idea of class not as a subcategory of social analysis. Not at all. He was not proposing class as a category of social analysis. He was proposing class as a means of describing transformation. There's something in that, whether or not you agree with Marx or not, is completely not the point. There's something in that that's a lesson for us about how we need to get out of the straitjacket of species thinking, species difference.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of our panelists very much, and it's time to go to lunch. We'll see you back at 1:30.